MotorWeek is made possible by Rock Auto, Tire Rack, and Die Hard.
Now we move on to a small Japanese car that's already here. First, we looked at what can happen when you combine luxury with turbocharged power. Now here is the other extreme. It looks innocent enough. It's one of the simplest, least expensive economy cars you can buy. But under this hood is enough hot air performance to curl the chest hairs on King Kong. This little beast is the Mitsubishi-made Dodge Plymouth Colt GTS Turbo. With a price tag of only $7,406, it's not only the least expensive turbocharged car you can buy, but one of the most fun, too.
Usually, when you're chugging along a winding country lane or struggling up a tall hill in your mostly boring econo-box, you find yourself wishing for even just a little more power. Well, try the same thing in the Dodge Plymouth Colt GTS Turbo, and you not only get instant satisfaction, but maybe a bit of whiplash to boot. Last year, we picked the tiny front-drive Chrysler Import as one of our MotorWeek best cars for 1983. But we really didn't expect Mitsubishi to improve on its success quite so much. The 1984 GTS package, with or without the tiny terrific turbocharger, is now a lot more than just spiffy trim. Along with a honeycomb grille, front air dam, and side skirts, you get upgraded Michelin XVS tires, gas over oil shocks, and both front and rear stabilizer bars. So while the GTS Turbo still looks like the same cute commuting Colt, it's now more a car for the serious driver. A peek under the hood provides more reinforcement. A 1.6-liter turbo four-cylinder with output rated at 102 horsepower and 122 pounds of torque, aided by a twin fuel injection throttle body system. This compares to the much more mundane 72 horses and 85 torque pounds put out by the non-turboed motor. Matched only with Mitsubishi's twin-stick 4x2 manual transaxle, acceleration is very strong in both the power and economy modes. The biggest difference between the two in time and speed is noticeable at lower gears and RPMs. Passing in third gear was a rush at 3.5 seconds in power and a still very fast 4.5 seconds in economy. Yet flat-out measurements were much closer between the two modes, less than 1/2 second apart from 0 to 60. And it's only a matter of 1 or 2/10 of a second and 1 mile per hour over our 500-foot on-ramp test, and the same thing in the standing quarter mile. While the heavy-duty clutch does seem capable of handling the big increase in power, we're not so sure about the twin-stick gearbox. Speed shifting could easily beat the synchronizers, and we worry if long and hard treatment might cause premature retirement. The lightweight 2,070-pound Colt has always been fun to sling around corners, even though it didn't always do it gracefully. It still doesn't. For one thing, the tires are still too skinny, and you can easily slide into a turn, often resulting in too much steering correction in the other direction. But it's an enormous improvement over last year's car. While the rack and pinion steering seems much faster than its 3.9 turns lock-to-lock would indicate, macho torque steer can work for or against you, depending on how heavily you hit the throttle. We did manage a fine average speed through our slalom of 43.7, regardless of power or economy gearing. Once you get used to that distinctive steering trait, buzzing around slower traffic on the interstate is a most secure matter, with little or no instability in the rear end. That, by the way, is a common fault of most front-drive cars. Brakes are also vastly improved over other Colts we've tested. The ventilated front disc help provide short stops of 118 feet on average from 55 miles per hour. While providing a confident feeling overall, pedal pressure is good despite a fair amount of fade. One thing, though, when the pads are hot, braking vibration rumbles through the front end for an alarming amount of shudder. Overall, the Colt GTS stops with good style, but it's not at the head of its class. Even in the Turbo GTS trim, this is still a Colt, and that means fine commuting fuel economy. With an EPA rating of 21 city and 32 highway, our MotorWeek sample managed a very fine 31 over the 100-mile economy loop, a feat few other higher performance cars could ever manage. Inside, it's also familiar Colt with far fewer improvements than we'd like. The Colt is small but not confining, yet the bucket seat fabrics still look cheap and the cushions are flat with mediocre support on long trips. We also notice the lack of a remote hatch release, unusual for any Oriental car. The dash gains a large tachometer, most useful, but still lacks a turbo gauge, a voltmeter, and an oil pressure readout. That last one's an important omission on any turbocharged model where lubrication is so critical. So we end where we began, finding the Dodge Plymouth Colt GTS Turbo a heck of a lot of cheap, spirited fun. But here's where we have to add a caution. With so much power, coupled with the modest improvements in handling and brakes, it can be a tricky car to drive hard. But if you think you can handle it, you'll find the Colt GTS Turbo a great dollar-for-dollar cure for econobox boredom.